Recording in progress.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this really important webinar on navigating the Philly rental market. Really excited about our panelists. Unfortunately, Vladimir Valentine, who was slated, is busy with the closing. So he is excused for now, but luckily, Paul and Mike and Jackie all have extensive experience as well. Getting started as a realtor and technology and tips for the trades. So I will go ahead and pass the baton to Jackie, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for taking time out of your morning to be here. This is a really exciting attendance for a Tuesday, so thank you. If you don't know me, I am Jackie Damus. I am the chair for the YPN committee this year, along with being on the board of directors for GPAR 2026. I am a young realtor myself who got into the business at a young age of 22, going on 23. And so I really understand the importance of understanding and mastering rentals, not only because they're a great way to keep your business going between sales, but because they really can kickstart your career. So I'm really excited for today's call. I think it's going to be really informational, and I'm excited to introduce you to our panelists who will be able to give you a lot of important tools and insights and really important updates in Philly for anyone working within the Philadelphia or Greater Philly rental market. So, our first speaker is Mike Goldstein. He's a broker owner of HubKey Real Estate. He's a Philadelphia based brokerage and property management company specializing in residential leasing, rental compliance, and landlord services. He has nearly a decade of experience working with landlords, investors, and agents across the region, and currently oversees a portfolio of managed properties throughout Philadelphia and the neighborhoods that surround it. Mike graduated from the Fox School of Business at Temple University in 2008 and purchased his first home in Manayunk that same year, and then started to rent out the additional bedrooms beginning in his career as a landlord. He has been managing properties since then and while continuing to acquire real estate throughout the city. In 2022, he founded HubKey to offer a more transparent and structured approach to property management and compliance. We also have the incredible Mr. Paul Cohen, an attorney specializing in the areas of real estate, landlord tenant law, condominium, and commercial litigation. As a licensed real estate broker himself, Mr. Cohen has positioned himself as a really unique real estate law expert in the industry.
All right, that's
Um,
enough. That's enough.
Let me give you
No,
your
nobody cares.
accolades.
So I tell people they go through all this, and at the end they say, "Oh, and he's in the Guinness Book of World Records," and the only thing anybody remembers or cares about is
Is
that.
that
So you can
all
just
right?
skip right to that, and we're good.
He's in the Guinness World. Nothing
It's
else
embarrassing.
matters, guys. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. Sorry.
So, Paul, speaking of compliance, and as most people have probably heard, there are new rules in Philly for both landlords and tenants. So, do you mind going through maybe what some of those changes are and enlightening us with your knowledge?
Sure, I'd love to. And good morning, everybody. So the first thing that changed is that with regard to rental applications, you cannot accept more than $50 from the tenant. So it could cost you $70, cost you $80, cost you $100 to do a screening. You can only charge the tenant a maximum of $50 or what it costs you. So if it costs you less than $50, you can only charge them what it actually costs you. It's kind of crazy, but you see this concept sweeping the nation. So a lot of other places are doing it. Philly's usually not the first place to come up with something. So it's just, and Pennsylvania especially is not. I tell everyone Pennsylvania is usually around the 27th state to get on board with something. So if you see something in California, you see it in Florida, you'll see it in Texas. For Kate, you'll see it in Massachusetts. And then eventually it'll work its way to Pennsylvania. So Philadelphia decided to get on board and come up with a law that says you can only charge $50. So make sure when you take that application fee, do not collect more than $50 or the amount that it costs you to do the screening. The second thing is with regard to the security deposit. In Pennsylvania, during the first year of a lease agreement, you can accept 2 months in security. If you accept the last month's rent in advance, that is considered a security deposit. For years, it wasn't. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania came out with this decision a few years ago. It basically said the last month's rent in advance is also considered a security deposit. So, however you structure it, you can only take 2 months' rent in security during the first year. After the first year, you can only have 1 month in security. So if you take 2 months up front, at the end of the first year, you have to refund one of those months of security. Now, the new law now says that if you do take more than 1 month in security, that additional security deposit, so let's say you take 2 months in security up front, the amount over 1 month, that second month, the tenant has the option of paying that security deposit over a 3 month period. Okay. The tenant can pay it up front if they want to. They're likely not going to want to do that if they have that option. So they can pay that second month over a 3 month period. People say to me, Paul, what happens if they don't pay? Okay. So basically, you have to start an eviction procedure. And I get into that if you want to, what that all entails. But the bottom line of it is an eviction in Philadelphia now takes approximately 7, 8 months to complete. So if the tenant doesn't pay that 1/3 of the security deposit, are you really going to start an eviction case? You're going to spend the money to hire an attorney to go to court and spend however long it takes and however much money it takes to go after the tenant for that additional money? Most likely not. So the reality of it is there's no penalty for the tenant in not paying that additional security deposit because the landlord's not going to take them to court. So the bottom line of all this is that I just recommend to landlords just take the 1 month in security at this point in time. If the tenant's willing to pay the 2 months up front, that's great. They're not likely to do that, but otherwise, I would just take the 1 month in security. And that's the latest law that passed. Lots of new laws on the horizon, not there yet. Okay.
So someone just popped in the chat asking you, is it true that the landlord must offer that option to divide the additional security into 3 months to the tenant? In other words, if the tenant does not ask themselves, does the landlord have to outright offer it?
Yes, they do.
And do you mind reiterating if they choose that 3 month option, when would the first payment of the three payments begin? Because I think there's a
Okay.
lot of confusion on that as well.
Yeah. So just so that we're all clear, the law is not very clear. As is typical when a law gets passed, uh, it doesn't totally delineate exactly what needs to happen. And until we have case law and until it goes through the court system, we won't know exactly what the law is. But what it appears to say is that if the lease starts in January, so the person paid the rent for the month of January and they paid a security deposit in January, starting in February, they would have to pay 1/3 of whatever that additional amount is. So it'd be February, March, and April, they would pay 1/3 each month.
Got it. So it starts the month after the lease start date.
Correct.
Okay. And that's what we should just do for now until told otherwise.
Yeah. So, because the question is going to become, let's say the lease starts on the 30th of the month and it's a 31-day month, they're paying the 1/3 of the security deposit 2 days later.
Absolutely. Thank you. Do you have anything else you wish to say? And if anyone else has questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and I will relay them as we go.
I'm an attorney. I got lots to say, but I'll wait for the next question and let other people talk.
Okay. So now we're going to go to Mike. So Mike, can you outline the key documents that are required for a compliant lease in Philadelphia? Can you maybe also speak about renters insurance and maybe some common issues that agents and landlords encounter?
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Jackie. Everybody has my screen up here. I put together a little toolkit for everybody here. I will put the link in the chat later. It's just a quick little form, and this will get sent to you automatically afterwards. So don't worry about taking any notes. So we have our core compliance checklist here. And, Paul, obviously chime in at any point. If you feel if you see fit, but these are the documents required on top of the lease to get through the eviction diversion program. So you can go through and read these things. The one thing that's not listed here that's probably most important to my lease is the rules and regulations, and that's basically a long document of things where myself or other people have been burned. And that's been super important. So all these things here go as addendums onto the lease, to make sure it's compliant to get through that eviction diversion program. Paul, you see anything missing here from my compliance checklist and free attorney advice?
So that's what you need for diversion. And prior to filing an eviction complaint, you have to first go through diversion. Um, what you also need legally is to have let me see what's missing here.
Oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing and pull it back up.
There is a lead pipe certification that's required. So you have to certify what you know about the whether or not there is lead in any of the pipes. And that can be as simple certification, which just simply states, I don't know anything, which is fine, but you do have to certify that.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's anything else missing. You have to set forth your smoking policy in the lease
Yeah, so
agreement.
we put that in our rules and regulations.
Okay. And you have to comply with the Renters Access Act, which was recently passed. So you
Yeah.
have to have a written policy for what your rental criteria is for accepting a tenant. And I love this one. You have to have you have to do an individual assessment based on uniform criteria. I think that's an oxymoron because how can you have uniform criteria but then apply it individually? But that's what's required under the law. I think that's everything.
So we received a question about rules and regulations. Someone asked that for rules and regulations, is it something that each landlord has to draw up from themselves based on their previous experiences as a landlord, or is it building specific to properties?
Yep. So ours goes twofold. We have the generic rules and regulations for every single property that we manage. Then for each property, we will add an addendum if there are specifics about the property. So I like to separate the two so we can use the main one for every single property and then add on as needed.
Yeah, and I'll say it is not something that is in the zip forms as a standard form. And depending on the landlords you work for, most of them will not have something. I know that my team lead, Greg Damus, similarly to what you said, Mike, has rules and regulations that he has drafted through years of being burned. And kind of
Yeah.
every time something happened, it gets added to the rules and regulations. And as an agent, this is something you can start doing. And you can present it to the landlords you're working for and representing, and you can say, hey, I have this, it offers extra protection. Do you want me to include it? Just be really careful if this is something you're going to do. Do not offer legal advice. Do not say this is a legal document unless you actually get it legalized by a real estate attorney. Otherwise, just say maybe it reiterates smoking policies. I mean, I know mine covers everything from water beds to bikes in the hallway to anything like that. So it is something you can create as an agent or work with somebody else with. But most landlords, unless this is really something they've been doing for a long time, it's not a document they already have, I would say. Um, Someone also asked if, Paul, can you show us examples of the additional certificates, rules, and regs that you mentioned?
I think that Mike mentioned that it's in his rules and regulations, and I guess he can share a copy of those with regard to the smoking policy.
Yeah, in regard to the smoking policy, in the rules and regs, it just says this building is a non-smoking building.
Which is something you
Um,
can also add on the last page of a standard residential lease. In the additional section, you can just say no smoking,
Yeah.
and that will cover it.
Yeah,
Uh,
but so what you might want to add is if there are areas where the person can smoke. So let's say there's a balcony and it's okay to smoke on the balcony. Let's say it is okay to smoke in the unit. Let's say it's okay to smoke within 25 feet of the entrance or exit. So you might want to add that into your smoking policy as well. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily apply with a single family residence. This is more for multifamily units.
yeah. And Kate is reiterating that if you do draft a rules and regs, you should have it reviewed by your brokerage to make sure you're not interfering anything with their policies and that it is best to have an attorney review it to make sure that you're not doing anything illegal. Um, Someone asked, how does smoking get enforced in non-compliance eviction?
That's a great question and a very difficult one. I had one situation I could tell you where it was a large apartment complex and somebody was smoking and they were allowed to smoke in the unit. Smoking was permitted, but the smoking was permeating another unit, and the person had a condition such that it was a fair housing issue because it was affecting his health. So he wanted to stop the smoking. I can tell you, this went on for months and months and months because how do you stop somebody from smoking? Very, very, very difficult. So, and especially now that you have legalized marijuana, if the person needs it for health reasons, although they're not supposed to be smoking it, but that's a whole nother issue, another seminar for another day. But the bottom line of it is it's very, very difficult to enforce. So you can ultimately take them to court, but you're not going to win on a case like that. Judge is not going to rule in your favor because you were smoking in a building because the person's going to come in, they're going to look like me with a suit and tie on and say, I'm not smoking. I didn't smoke. Or they say, I stopped. I'm not going to smoke anymore. You're not going to win on the case. And then they leave court, and the next thing you know, they're smoking again. So it's very difficult to enforce. My suggestion to you would be at the end of the lease term to terminate the lease if you can. It's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. And for either of you to answer, as landlords or property managers, do you have any tools or tips you recommend for realtors who are handling rental transactions in their careers or any technology that might be useful?
For agents.
Do you want to answer that, Mike, or?
Or even
Yeah, I mean,
landlords, yeah.
yeah, for landlord, I like I come into real estate offices and present to teams about, I call it how to lure to land in Philly. And
Mm.
what it is, it's a lot of tools for self-managing landlords. Um, from a bookkeeping perspective, I always recommend REI Hub because real estate investors have a lot of different entities, and with different entities, QuickBooks can get expensive quickly. So REI Hub is very well priced software to help people do their bookkeeping better. That would probably be the first and foremost. From an inspection app, because one of the most important things that we see self-managing landlords miss is doing a move-in, what we call evaluation, but it's your move-in inspection. What's the condition of the home? We use software called Z Inspector just because we do such a high volume of them. But my second recommendation is just make sure you're taking lots of pictures and video and documenting the condition, and then send the tenant an email with all of that information and have them sign off on it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I just have one thing that I would add, and that is people like rules. So just like your children like rules, even though you may think they don't, they do. And if you have a strict rule and you follow it all the time, your kids are okay with that. They'll follow it. But you deviate one time, and your kids know that there's a chance that they can get whatever they got that one time, they will forever hound you and bother you to make sure that they can keep trying to get it to happen again. Well, it's the same thing with your tenants. If you let them slide once, they know that they can continue to be able to try and get that to happen again. So, my advice to you is as much as you want to be nice to people, you want to be friendly with your tenants, you want to try and help people out. Yeah, my suggestion is have strict rules and follow them. So if there's a late charge on the after the fifth of the month, you charge the late charge. I don't care what the reason is. You charge that late charge because they come up with a reason, you let them go. Next month, you're going to have the same problem. They're going to want to be able to slide and not have to pay the late charge. They need to know that that rent is due on the first of the month. It's late on the first of the month. There isn't a late charge maybe until the fifth of the month, but it's due on the first. And after the fifth, they will be charged the late charge. And guess what? They will start paying you on time. Right from the beginning, you want to establish that. You want to establish the rules and follow the rules. As much as you want to be a nice guy, it's just like with your children. You got to set the rules and follow the rules. So that's my advice, especially to small landlords who try to work with their tenants. It doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually dealt with this yesterday. I had a landlord client that we rented for, and they came to me saying, "Hey, the tenants aren't paying their water bills. They're refusing to, even though it's in the lease. What do we do? They're really difficult tenants. They've been really quiet and kind lately, and we don't want to ruffle feathers." And I had to say, listen, if you let them take advantage of you, they're going to keep taking advantage of you. And I know you don't want to ruffle feathers, but you have to put your foot down because in the end of the day, this is a lease with terms they agreed to. And they did. And I got an email this morning saying, oh, they agreed. Everything is good. Like all is well. So don't be afraid if you're a landlord or even if you're an agent working for a landlord and they're scared to maybe enforce their lease, just encourage them that the tenants knew what they were signing. And Kate even made a really good point about if you move away from the rules or if you make exceptions for some tenants and not for others, you could look at a fair housing violation because then they're going to go, oh, well, why didn't you make the exception for this person? I heard the girl on the third floor got a rent break and I didn't get one. And fair housing violations are more common than you may think. Um, so you really have to be careful with that.
Yeah, the other thing I want to mention is that in Philadelphia, before you can file an eviction complaint, you have to file for a diversion.
Hmm.
As part of the diversion filing, if the tenant qualifies for tenant financial assistance or TFA, then they can get up to $3,500 in back rent paid, plus the next 2 months of rent get paid. So it's very important that if your rents are over $1,750 a month, that during the first month of delinquency, you file for diversion. It's not an eviction filing, it's a pre-eviction filing that will allow your tenants to get financial assistance. If you wait to the second month and that amount that is owed is over $3,500, the tenant will not qualify for financial assistance. So now, when that tenant becomes delinquent down the line and you file against them for eviction, you won't be able to get the financial assistance. So you're actually doing the tenants a favor by filing on them right away. And I say filing on them, filing with diversion, which is not an eviction filing. It doesn't go against their record. So it actually helps them to be able to get the financial assistance. So it's really important that if your rents are over 1750 a month, that you file for diversion during that first month so you can get that financial assistance.
Absolutely. And I'm going to ask another question for the group because I see this come along a lot. So something that Mike touched on is that landlords need a rental suitability in order to collect rent, and it's something that should be included in a lease package. This happens a lot. You take on a landlord client and they say, I'm not doing that. I'm not getting a rental suit. I've never had one. As an agent, what do you advise our response be to that landlord client?
I wouldn't work with them. So I think you're opening yourself up to liability. So, we mandate that people get it. We will get it for them. That's what we do. We don't even let other people do it. We also offer the service to just go get a rental license for people, even if they don't need, we're not managing their property because your hands are tied. Even with your rules and regulations, you can't even really enforce them without a rental license.
So there's two things here. There's the rental license and then there's the certificate of rental suitability,
Hmm.
both of which need to be obtained. If you don't have either of those things, then you cannot collect the rent. It's a huge problem. Okay. So you as a landlord or as a managing agent aren't legally allowed to collect the rent if you don't have those licenses. So I would tell that landlord you absolutely have to get those licenses, and if they don't, I wouldn't represent them.
Absolutely.
The other thing we got to be careful with, and that's the new bill that was just introduced by Council Member O'Rourke, where if this bill gets passed and I'm not able to kill at least parts of it, especially this part, and which states that if you don't have those licenses, not only can't you collect rent, but any rent that's already been paid is now clawed back or abated, and they get all that money back. So let's say you didn't have a rental license, you've been renting the property out for 3 years. Tenant's been paying the rent. You have no violations against the property. Your property is in great condition. Tenant was very happy. He gets himself an attorney that realizes that, hey, you can get all that money back. They're now going to file suit against you and get all that rental money back that they've paid.
Wow.
So it's crucial that you have a license, rental license, and get a certificate of rental suitability.
And if the landlord refuses and you want to represent them anyway for whatever reason, it's best you put all of this in writing. You get all of this in writing that you've not only advised them and gave them uh the warnings of what will happen, but get their refusal in writing as well. Because the last thing you want is to represent a landlord regardless, and something happens with their tenant and they start withholding rent, and then that landlord is coming after you saying, well, you didn't warn me or you didn't tell me, and this, that, and the third. You always, I mean, most of everything should be in writing, but it's really important if you choose to represent someone who doesn't want to follow protocol, that you protect yourself at the very least.
Yes, absolutely, but I wouldn't represent them.
No.
If they're not going to follow your advice, and that's just basic, simple,
Yeah.
listen, you have to do, you can't collect the rent. That's devastating. So if they're not going to listen to you with that,
Oh.
it's not a good start.
It's
Put
not.
it that way.
And on the flip side, if you are representing a tenant and you receive the lease package from the listing agent and it does not include the proper forms or licenses, maybe just make your client aware. Let them sit on it, but at least make them aware. I always do. I say, listen, you can sign this lease. It doesn't hurt you, but be warned, it doesn't have what it needs, and maybe keep that in your back pocket in case you get neglected.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
important on both sides to understand what is required.
off the record, I would sign the lease agreement and a month later stop paying the rent.
Stop paying rent. I mean, I don't say that, but I say,
Yeah.
listen, if these people start neglecting
I,
you,
I don't say that either. I represent landlords, but I'm just saying you could. You got to be really careful with that.
absolutely. But it is really important as a tenant agent because you're going to get leases to look through and review. And even if like a bed bug addendum is missing or the lead-based paint, you look better to your client and you advocate for them better if you can point out that some of the city required documents are missing. Um, all right, we have a couple more questions. As a realtor representing a tenant, when a tenant has signed a lease and your tenant agency is completed, and now they are having issues with the landlord repairing items in the home, how do I offer help to this previous client?
I would tell them to get an attorney.
Absolutely. You don't want to act as an attorney. You don't want to give legal advice.
No.
You really, as much as you want to be able to be there for them, it's really best to just say, listen, I think Philly has the Turn program, which tenants can reach out to. There are some free services. Uh,
There's lots of free services and they get free legal
mhm,
aid when they have to go to court as well.
yeah.
And so I just put a link in the chat, phillytenant.org. Um, Seems to be gaining some traction for tenants in Philly and just how to advocate for tenants.
Yeah, the best thing you can do is just advocate for them and encourage them to put legal eyes on it. Do we have any other questions from anybody in the group?
Because this is being hosted by the YPN, which is Young Professional Network Committee, Mike, since you yourself started out as a landlord, if you could kind of touch base on getting started in the profession, because I know, to Jackie's point, a lot of people get started helping people find apartments and working with tenants. So, as a new realtor, some tools and tech that you are seeing or recommend for any new realtors getting started in the market today.
Yeah, so as I'm going to talk kind of as a self-managing landlord, and I just think it's good to advocate for your clients that way. You know, we talked about the REI Hub and the evaluations. Finding a property management software was one of the best things that I did when I was getting started, not as a property manager, but just as a real estate investor myself. Now, I haven't looked at this software in a while, so don't quote me on it, but Tenant Cloud is what I used in the past. It was inexpensive, maybe $15 a month. It'll let me accept payments, it let me post the leases and all the information that the tenants would need. I just really think that helps. Now, I know a lot of people are taking payment now through Venmo and things like that. I would, to me, that's a bookkeeping nightmare, and that's where I probably things got a little unorganized in the beginning, and that's why I brought on Tenant Cloud from the money perspective. That was just always huge for me. Um, so I focus there on kind of the back end organizational pieces. What I'm doing now as a property manager as I build an organization is I'm using Google's suite of AI tools. Couple reasons. One, I think Google is going to win the AI war kind of long term. And two, it's free because my emails are hosted through Google. So if you have your own email addresses, there's a big suite of tools that you can use. I'm going to show you one thing now that I built to help my team, which are a lot of them are remote team members, kind of understand how things work in Philadelphia. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here again. So I use something called Notebook LM with Google. Again, it's free. And what it does is it lets me build my own kind of, if you think of, everyone knows Chat GPT, it lets me directly put in the sources that I wanted to look at. So this is my Philadelphia tenant law and screening guidelines. So I've uploaded federal, state, and local compliance laws along with my personal rental criteria. So when I ask what Google calls Gemini, their AI, it just looks at these sources. I'm going to show you that in a second here. But what it also does, and I'm no graphic designer at all, but it basically takes all of these documents and within 2 minutes can create a visual like this. Now, this is not 100% perfect. You need to download this, put it into Canva, and edit and update it. But it's really helped my organization grow by visualizing all this dense information. So this
That's
is
great.
Gemini. This back end here feeds Google. Again, this is free. Google's AI. So when I go in here and I pick the specific sources that I wanted to look at, my team can ask questions about rental criteria. Now, before Paul has a heart attack, I'll say this. We have an AI policy in our company. So the team knows they just can't reply to an email just based on this. They need to send it to me for approval before it can go out. But I can just type in, how do I, verify a tenant for healthcare? And it will go in and look at my specific sources and come up with the answer. See if it works. I think it's a little slow just because I'm screen sharing, but I'm going to stop sharing. I'll open up for questions. I know it's a lot of info.
Yeah, that's great. We did get a few questions in the meantime. So someone asked, could you please share tips and tricks for midterm rentals in Philly?
I just do long-term rentals. I mean, the 30 days is the above 30 days, obviously makes it the midterm rental. I used to do short-term rentals before all of the legislation got passed. And to me, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. It's a lot more work.
And
Yeah, it's a
you go ahead.
larger fish to fry.
Keep in mind that for any lease that is for less than 1 year in Philadelphia, in order to terminate the lease at the end of the term, you need good cause. You can't just terminate it. So any lease essentially that's for less than a year becomes a lease forever. So you really want to have a lease for at least a year in Philadelphia. Now, I get if you're going to have short-term rentals, you can charge a premium for it. That's a different story. That's a business decision. But from a purely legal standpoint, you can't terminate that lease. So there's really no upside in having a short-term lease from a landlord standpoint. So you have a 6-month lease. At the end of 6 months, you can't terminate it unless you have good cause.
Someone else asked, and I think I can answer. Actually, wait, hold on. Someone has a kickoff to what you just said, Paul. Is it true that the good cause requirement is currently being proposed in City Council to potentially be applicable to long-term leases as well?
Yes, and that's part of Council Member O'Rourke's two bills that are outstanding right now.
And what about the renewal after the first year being monthly? So after the 1 year term, if a lease says it's going to be month to month.
Yeah, that's a great question, and the same rules apply. So if it becomes a month-to-month lease, then you're going to need good cause. So you want the renewal to be 1 year as well.
Absolutely. Someone asked a question that I will answer. They said, I noticed it is taking longer to rent apartments in the last 6 months or so. Do you have the same issues? I would say this is very common. It's dry season, typically between like November and February. It is the slower season. Most people don't want to move in the winter. Spring and summer are the hot markets. It's not impossible to rent, but you really want to make sure you're being mindful about what you're listing. Make sure it's a fair price. Don't be egregious. Something I do for my landlord clients, if let's say their house they decide to rent it in December, or we get a lease start date of January and December, something you can always advise is like, hey, maybe offer the tenant a deal if you give them a longer lease. Maybe instead of a 12-year term, you offer them a 16-month term, and that way their lease is ending in the spring and it can renew spring to spring. And if they do leave, then you have a springtime vacancy. But it is generally a slower time of the year right now. It's totally normal. Just make sure you're advocating for your landlord client and have good photos online and you're showing it and make the rent feasible for people. But yes, it's very normal. Any other questions or anything that Mike or Paul you want to touch on?
I'm going to just throw in a quick link here into the chat. If anybody wants the compliance toolkit, just fill that out and you'll get that emailed to you.
Beautiful. And I'll keep that copied as well. So if you miss it from the chat, just ask me and I'll send it to you. Great. Well, if nobody else has any questions or comments, I think we can wrap this up. We really appreciate your time, Mike and Paul, and sharing all of your information and resources. We really hope that this was helpful for everybody. We really have seen a large need to go over this information and sometimes more in depth. So I do know that Lexi and I are talking about kind of having another rental Zoom talk. It won't go through what we went through today, since hopefully you're on this call listening to it if it's something you needed. But I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me personally if you have anything you want to know about rentals, any questions or topics regarding rentals that you would wish to see in our next Zoom chat. And we can even go over how to maybe fill out some of the forms. So please feel free to reach out to me individually. And yeah, if that's it, we can wrap it up here. So yes, we really appreciate everybody's time coming today. And Paul and Mike, thank you again for your help. This was really informational.
Okay. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all.